You've got to have your passion exude through you. You've got to let people know you mean it. Are you authentic? Are you real? Do they see it in your eyes? Do they see it in your expression? Our words and our body language matter. I want to hear people say, Lisa listened to me. She cared. Cannot be afraid to own our mistakes. We cannot be afraid to stop and say, you know what? I can do better and I owe you better. I want you to imagine a boat on a lake, and it's traveling across the lake, the wake that it's creating. That boat could be in the middle of the lake, but the wake is continuous all the way to shore. It doesn't matter. These waves that are created, they continue to move outward. Our interactions with others are much like that. I want you to think about those interactions, the words we say, the tone, our body language, everything. We have a wake as well. Every interaction we have with a person, it leaves a wake, good or bad. Can you think of those people in your life that just make you smile? They're the ones that you just want to be around to, that we gravitate to. They communicate a little bit differently. They listen a little bit different. And today, that difference is our focus. Considering how we communicate with our words, our body language, our intentions, and our actions. Have you ever had a conversation and as you have reflected on it immediately or later in that day, you were like, oh, I wish I could do that over, or I could have a mulligan. It didn't land the way that I wanted to, or maybe it didn't come across the way I wanted it to. You guys, I've had so many of those in my life, actually professionally and personally. Sometimes I did get a do-over, and then there were times I didn't. And I look back on those moments and I regret that interaction I had with that person. I want you to imagine a boat on a lake, and it's traveling across the lake, the wake that it's creating. That boat could be in the middle of the lake, but the wake is continuous all the way to shore. It doesn't matter. These waves that are created, they continue to move outward. Our interactions with others are much like that. I want you to think about those interactions, the words we say, the tone, our body language, everything. We have a wake as well. Every interaction we have with a person, it leaves a wake, good or bad. So think about your interactions. Imagine if every person that you encountered every single day left your presence feeling uplifted. Or imagine that interaction if they leave drained. My challenge constantly is thinking, how can I stretch a person? How can I create an environment where they're wanting to be their best self and still not leave the conversation overwhelmed or drained? That's the big lift for leadership, right? We also need to think about how we can control that wake, because we can create that ripple effect where every interaction we have with others builds a stronger relationship. It fosters a more positive environment. We want to make sure that the opportunities create that environment where they want to gravitate toward us as a leader. Think about those people in life you just want to constantly be around. They're really a light. They're truly a light for you. They have a gift that every interaction you have with them, you feel, rejoice. You feel happiness. You feel uplifted. You feel validated. You feel heard. Who is that person for you? I was thinking about this, and honestly, I've been blessed with so many people in my life that make me feel that way, from family members to peers to colleagues. But I want to tell you about one today, and this is a good friend of mine named Leah. Leah's an elementary principal, and she's had a lot of challenges she's had to face since she started her leadership job. But I'm blessed to call Leah a friend, not because of all the great things that she's capable of and does as a leader, and there are many, I promise, but in spite of all the challenges that Leah faces, she steps up every single day. She embraces the opportunity, and she still strives to celebrate others. Leah, in my mind, is the queen of three different things. First, she takes action all the time, and she thinks about how her action has consequences to others. That's that wake I'm talking about. She makes sure that that action is positive. She'll take risk, and she definitely will course correct if needed, but she's an action-oriented person. Number two, Leah does well. She acknowledges and says thanks. This blows me away. Leah will take the time to acknowledge and celebrate others, but she also thanks people that stretches her, that gives her a different point of view, that makes her think differently. Acknowledging others and giving thanks changes our wake, right? It changes the way people want to interact with us. And the third thing Leah does is she builds like-minded communities. I can't tell you all the examples that I could give Leah in her personal life, in her professional life, where she's building a community, because when she gets an idea, she wants to share it with others. She wants everybody on board, and it's amazing to watch. Leah's going to stretch you. I've been fortunate enough to have Leah in my audience when I'm speaking several times at trainings. What makes Leah unique is that she follows up. She follows up with specifics. She's going to share how I stretched her. She's going to share the action she's going to take, and she'll take pictures. She sends them to me later. Leah makes me a better person. Leah makes me a better training, because I know every single time I enter an audience, I have a Leah that's out there. I have someone that's going to take and gravitate to the words that I say. I have someone that's thinking, how can I process this? How can I use that? And that requires me to be upping my game, to do a better job at thinking of the wake that I leave with others. We all need Leahs in our life, because they stretch us, they make us better, but they also celebrate us and they give us time. And you guys, we need to thank the Leahs in our life. The challenge for me daily is, how can I be that person where every single interaction I have with others, I leave them where they feel validated, that there's a wake. You guys, we all have a bandwidth in our life too, right? It's like some days we're depleted, some days we're exhausted, but we still have to find a way to push through those moments. It's tough. When you're an educator going to school, you have to leave the baggage and the luggage and all that's going on in your life at home, because we've got to give in to and inspire and have a wake as we walk down those halls to impact our campus, our leaders, our teachers, our students in a way they feel validated and they feel inspired. We want to think about those interactions, because you guys, when we leave a wake that's positive, it can be transformational to the people we interact with and transformational to the environment we're around. Let's think about our focus today. Always, we're going to have those 3 points, right, that we're going to focus on. We're going to have a couple of questions, and then we're going to walk away with an action item. Let's start with our 3 points of focus. First of all, point number 1, leaving a wake in our interaction is all about personal ownership, responsibility, and accountability. It's absolutely critical we take personal responsibility for our actions, the things we say, the things we do, for the experience we create for others. Think about it, because our conversations are an experience with others, good or bad. Every interaction, whether big or small, contributes to that person's overall perspective of us, and it contributes to how they want or expect to interact with us. Every single interaction absolutely matters. I want you to think about a recent interaction that you've had. Maybe that person left an unintentional negative impact on you. The wake was rough. I want you to challenge yourself to think about that interaction. What was it that made it difficult? What made it challenging? What made you leave thinking that was brutal? I want you to think about the times maybe you left that same wake. You guys, we have to take personal ownership for that. Maybe we said something. I look all the time. I can look at my own personal life with my husband. I can think about it with my children. I can think about it with my peers, my colleagues. When I say something and I can see body language change and I create unintentional interactions, we want to make sure that we accept ownership and responsibility. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Can I take that and redo that? Because how that came across wasn't what I intended. You guys, that vulnerability is an asset. Sometimes we're too afraid as leaders to step out there and say, I was wrong. I need to course correct that decision. I'm sorry. I didn't listen to you like I needed to. I'm sorry. You have my full undivided attention now. Those type of comments and interactions with people make a difference. It makes people want to talk to us. It makes people want to interact with us. Our wake is much more positive when we do that. You guys, we cannot be afraid to own our mistakes. We cannot be afraid to stop and say, you know what? I can do better and I owe you better. Point number 1 is our own personal responsibility and ownership. Point number 2 is empathy and connection. Man, that's a couple of big words right there, right? Empathy and connection. And when I say big words, I'm talking lots of weight with it and lots that it means, okay? We have to examine the power of empathy in building solid relationships and connections. It's about fostering this with our teams. It's about creating a trust in that environment that we really try to understand where they're at in their space. To do that, we must really actively examine the roles of our teachers. We must genuinely listen. We have to be curious. We have to know what's going on in your world. What's the challenge in your classroom today? How come you're struggling as a leader? What's the biggest thing you're facing that you're really worried about? Ask questions. We need to be authentic and understanding and creating those relationships. Who all are we talking to and having conversations with like this? Think about your buildings. In your buildings, you have assistant principals, you have counselors, you have other leadership roles, instructional specialists. Are we asking them about their challenges? Are we trying to understand what their difficulties are? Are we understanding what they're celebrating? All of that is part of creating these interactions where our wake is much different. You know, I want to hear people say, Lisa listened to me. She cared. She heard me. You guys, we can't always answer and provide what everybody needs, but you can listen. You can be that ear, that compassionate voice for what they're going through. When you leave a conversation, what did you learn about that person? That's the other thing I'm really working on. I'm trying to make sure every person that I have a conversation with, I learn something about them. I learn what they want as a goal in life. I learn where they want to stretch. I want to learn additional information about their passion, ways that I can support them. Maybe I just want to know what their focus is for that day because they're just trying to get through the day. But I want to know the things they're looking forward to. I want to know the things they want to celebrate. You guys, when we do that, we'll also transform the culture and climate that we're in as well, no matter what the environment is. When people know we care about them, that's so different. You've got to invest in conversations. I find myself realizing that sometimes a conversation is a means to an end. Do you have that happen to you? Think about it. It's like, I've just got to get my point across, or I've just got to make sure they know this, or I've just got to get this question answered. And sometimes we just have too many of those, and the wake is not good. We got to make sure that we stay actively engaged, we actively listen, and we're curious. That's going to transform the wakes. Point number 2, empathy and connection. Empathy and connection. Point number 3, our words and our body language matter. How we say things, the enthusiasm. It's really tough if you say, I'm super excited about this day today. Seriously, you've got to have your passion exude through you. You've got to let people know you mean it. Are you authentic? Are you real? Do they see it in your eyes? Do they see it in your expression? The tone that we use, the words that we say, the behavior, all of it should match with what our intent is. You know, we've got to take time and think through those things. And we've got to be we got to be really focusing on the people around us, because we need to look at their body language, their tone, and we need to see how they're responding. Do you make eye contact? Are you looking at the person? Are you looking at their heart and soul when they're speaking about something that matters so much? Or do you have your head in the phone? When you're in that meeting, are you talking to somebody and pretending like you're focusing on them, but you can see the rattle next to you where that phone's bouncing on vibrate? Are you turning and looking and acknowledging a text that's coming in? You guys, that is a wake a person doesn't want, but because they know that they're not the priority. It's that email or it's that text or it's that phone. Turn it off for that split second. I'm usually in an airport every single week. I pass by hundreds and hundreds of people in these terminals, and I see hundreds and hundreds of people not connecting in an authentic way, not having a conversation. They're not communicating. They have their heads down, their heads are in a phone, their heads are in a computer. They have just a straight face look, When you're in a room with others, do you look around? Do you see what's going on? People need your undivided attention. When somebody asks you a question, do you stop? Do you give them your time? And do you check yourself before you give a response? I have certain response rules. I know you're thinking, Lisa, response rules? What are those? Well, I have to have response rules for me. These are times when I'm at the end of the day that I'm tired. These are times where I've had maybe a rough morning. Maybe I'm struggling to get started and I have all these people right in my face immediately. I think about these times most when my grandkids come over because I've had a long day. And let me tell you, they're not afraid to say, you, Zaza, you're not paying attention to me. You're not looking at me. Get your head out of the computer. So now I've established response rules for me. And my response rules are, I need to let others know. Can you give me just a second? Can you wait for just a second? Can we schedule a time to talk about this? Because I want to give you my undivided attention. I want it to be about you, and I'm not in the place right now that I can give you the attention you need and you deserve. Response rules. You might consider thinking about those. Point number 3. Our words, our body language, they all matter. So a recap of our 3 points. We got to take personal ownership of our words, our actions, and the wakes we leave. And remember, vulnerability is an asset as a leader. We've got to be willing to take that ownership. Point number 2, empathy and connection. We need to really understand and listen what people are going through in their challenges. And then we need to make connections at a whole different level so we can see the light and they can see the light in us. And point number 3, our words and body language matter. You guys, it speaks volumes before we ever open our mouth, our body language and our actions. Our 2 questions for this podcast. First of all, I want you to think about how can I be more mindful of the energy and presence I bring into every interaction? How might this enhance the interaction? How might it enhance the wake that I leave with others? Be mindful of the energy. Secondly, in what ways can I cultivate that connection in my leadership approach where I'm prioritizing the person in front of me, where I'm giving a more active curiosity, listening, passionate understanding of what they're going through? I want to find ways that I can make that connection in my leadership environment. My quote for today is, leadership's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And to do that, it is about the way we communicate. Communication is 2 ways, you guys. It's not just us speaking. It's literally listening and understanding. Each podcast, we have action items that we take away with. To me, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's where learning takes place, right? Learning should be a catalyst for behavior change. So our action item for this month, I want to challenge you. Every time you have a conversation with someone coming up that's providing feedback, it's growth, it's a stretch, it's an interaction, I want you to take the time to ask them at the end of it, how did I make you feel? Did I make you feel part of the conversation? Did you feel that I was listening to you intently? Did you feel like I was understanding and asking you questions? You guys, this is an opportunity for us to ask, listen, and learn, and it will enhance those relationships along the way. I always count my blessings every day. They're abundant, I got to tell you. I'm blessed to work with schools everywhere, and I've often learned the hard way and taken some rough bumps along the way that my tone and body language speaks volumes, because sometimes I only get one interaction with a person. Just think about that. One interaction. What is the wake that I'm going to leave? But you know what? it's also an opportunity for me to practice daily. It's intentional practice. It's an opportunity that I can take and do my very best and then get a do-over the next day. I've got to do better. I pray every day that any and every interaction I have with others leaves them feeling affirmed, positive, and stretched. Guys, my goal in these podcasts is to create this wonderful network of like-minded people who want to learn with each other and they want to be stretched. I'm just happy dancing that you joined me in this podcast today. I love that we can use this podcast to learn from each other, discuss relevant topics that are current and on our mind, really diving into the real world and the hard work of leadership. Keep sharing topics. Keep sharing questions that you want me to address in upcoming podcasts. Say hi to me when I'm visiting your school and campus and tell me what you heard and what resonated and what you did with it. There's a link in our show notes today to share any feedback and questions that you might have. Thank you for joining the Learning and Leadership podcast today. Let's keep growing together. I believe in you. I believe in your leadership potential. Have an amazing day. And you guys, make it a goal that you create the kind of interaction with others that they can't wait to be around you again.